The text message from my sister Rachel arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Emergency. I need to talk. It's about Emma. My blood went cold. Emma was my 3-month-old daughter, currently sleeping peacefully in her crib just down the hall. My husband Marcus was out of town on a classified assignment, something about border security that he couldn't discuss. Whatever Rachel wanted to tell me about my baby couldn't wait until morning, and that terrified me. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I had always known Rachel was troubled, but I never imagined she was dangerous. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, she was the wild child, while I was the responsible one. She dropped out of college, bounced between jobs, and had a string of relationships that ended badly. Meanwhile, I finished my degree in social work, married Marcus, who worked his way up from Border Patrol agent to Deputy Chief at Homeland Security, and we built what I thought was a stable life in Arlington, Virginia. The problem started 3 weeks after Emma was born. Rachel showed up at our doorstep unannounced, claiming she needed a place to stay after losing her apartment. Marcus wasn't thrilled about having my unpredictable sister living with us during such a crucial time, but I convinced him it would only be temporary. Rachel seemed genuinely excited about being an aunt, constantly offering to help with feeding and diaper changes. She'd spend hours just staring at Emma, and I thought it was sweet how attached she was getting. The first red flag should have been the phone calls. Rachel would disappear into the guest room for hours, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about it, she'd say she was looking for work or dealing with some legal issues back in Oregon. I wanted to believe her because Emma seemed to calm down whenever Rachel held her, and frankly, I was exhausted enough to appreciate any help I could get. But then I started noticing strange things. Rachel would ask detailed questions about Emma's birth certificate, her social security number, even her pediatrician's information. She claimed she was helping me organize Emma's paperwork, which sounded reasonable enough for a new mom drowning in bureaucracy. I was so sleep-deprived and overwhelmed that I didn't think twice about sharing those details. The breaking point came on a Sunday evening. Marcus had left that morning for what he said would be a week-long operation, coordinating with ICE and DEA on something happening near the Texas border. Rachel seemed unusually excited after he left, almost giddy. She kept checking her phone and pacing around the living room. When Emma started crying during her evening feeding, Rachel practically snatched her from my arms. "You look exhausted, Claire. Why don't you take a hot bath? I've got this." I should have listened to my instincts, but I was running on maybe 3 hours of sleep. The bath sounded like heaven. I locked the bathroom door and sank into the hot water, finally feeling some of the tension leave my shoulders. That's when I heard it, through the thin walls, Rachel's voice, but she wasn't talking to Emma. "Yeah, she's perfect, healthy, no issues with the birth, 3 months old exactly." There was a pause. "The mother won't be a problem. She trusts me completely." My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I quietly drained the tub and pressed my ear against the wall, straining to hear more. Tuesday night would work. The husband's gone until next weekend, so the timing is perfect. How much did we say again? Okay, but I want half up front. This isn't exactly risk-free for me. I felt like I was going to be sick. Rachel was talking about selling my baby, my Emma. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and started to call Marcus, then remembered he was on a classified operation and might not be reachable. Instead, I texted him, "Emergency. Call me ASAP. It's about Emma and Rachel." I threw on clothes and crept toward Emma's nursery. The door was closed, which was unusual. We always kept it open so we could hear if she cried. I pressed my ear against a door and heard Rachel's voice again, softer now, like she was talking directly to Emma. "Don't worry, little one. You're going to have a much better life than what your mommy can give you. These people have money, resources. They'll take good care of you." I wanted to burst through that door, but something told me I needed to be smart about this. If Rachel was desperate enough to sell a baby, she might be desperate enough to do something drastic if cornered. I needed proof, and I needed Marcus. I tiptoed back to my bedroom and called the non-emergency number Marcus had given me for situations where I couldn't reach him directly. A stern voice answered after 2 rings. "This is Deputy Chief Reeves's emergency contact line. This is his wife, Claire. I need to speak with him immediately. It's about our daughter." "Ma'am, the deputy chief is currently in a classified briefing, unless this is a life-threatening emergency." "Someone is trying to kidnap my baby," I whispered, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. There was a brief pause. "Hold the line, ma'am. We're patching you through now." Marcus's voice came through crystal clear 30 seconds later. "Claire, what's happening?" I quickly explained what I'd overheard, my words tumbling out in a rush. There was complete silence on his end for what felt like forever. "Marcus, are you there?" "I'm here. Listen to me very carefully. Do not confront Rachel. Do not let on that you know anything. Can you get to Emma right now?" "The nursery door is closed. Rachel's in there with her." "Okay, go knock on the door, say something normal, like you forgot Emma's nighttime medicine or you need to check her temperature. Get visual confirmation that Emma is okay, then get out of there. I'm making some calls." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that ends with Rachel in federal custody. Baby trafficking crosses state lines, which makes it our jurisdiction. I'm activating a rapid response team, but I need you to stay calm and keep Emma safe until they arrive." I crept back down the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. The nursery door was still closed, but I could hear Rachel humming softly inside. I knocked gently. "Rachel, I just want to give Emma her vitamin drops before bed." The humming stopped. "Oh, she's already asleep, Claire. I wouldn't want to wake her." "It'll just take a second. The pediatrician said it's important to give them at the same time every night." I heard movement, then the door opened just a crack. Rachel's face appeared, and something in her expression made my blood run cold. Her eyes were different, calculating, almost predatory. "She's fine, Claire. Why don't you get some rest? You've been so stressed lately." Behind her, I could hear Emma making small baby sounds. She was awake, which meant Rachel had lied. I forced myself to smile. "You're right, I am exhausted. Thanks for taking such good care of her." I turned and walked back toward my bedroom, but instead of going inside, I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Within minutes, I heard Rachel's voice again, quieter but urgent. "There might be a problem. The mother is acting suspicious." Pause. "No, I can handle it, but we might need to move faster than planned." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Team is 20 minutes out. Stay in your bedroom with the door locked until you hear federal agents warrant. Do not open the door for anyone else." 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I sat on my bed, clutching my phone, listening to every sound in the house. Rachel had gone quiet, which somehow felt more ominous than her phone conversations. Emma wasn't crying, but I couldn't tell if that was good or bad. At exactly 3:27 a.m., I heard car doors slamming outside, then footsteps on the front porch, then the words that made me collapse with relief. "Federal agents, warrant." The sound of splintering wood echoed through the house as the front door gave way. Heavy footsteps pounded across our hardwood floors, followed by shouted commands that made my adrenaline spike even higher. "The kitchen is clear. The living room is clear. Moving to the back of the house." I heard Rachel's voice, high-pitched and panicked. "What is this? You can't just break into someone's home." "Ma'am, step away from the infant and put your hands where we can see them." That's when Emma started screaming. The sound cut through me like a knife, and every maternal instinct told me to run to her. But Marcus had been clear. Stay locked in the bedroom until this was over. "Agent Morrison, we need the mother to identify the child." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. "Mrs. Reeves, this is Special Agent Morrison with Homeland Security Investigations. Your husband sent us. It's safe to come out now." I unlocked my bedroom door with trembling hands. The hallway was full of people in tactical gear, their faces hidden behind visors and masks. One of them, a tall woman with short blonde hair, had removed her helmet and was holding Emma, who was still crying but seemed unharmed. "Is this your daughter?" Agent Morrison asked. "Yes, that's Emma." I reached for her, and the agent carefully transferred her to my arms. Emma immediately began to calm down, her tiny fist gripping my shirt. The scene in the living room looked like something from a crime drama. Rachel was handcuffed on the couch, her face streaked with tears and mascara. Two agents were photographing her cell phone, while another was sealing it in an evidence bag. A laptop I'd never seen before was open on the coffee table, displaying what looked like a website with disturbing content. "Claire, you have to understand," Rachel pleaded when she saw me. "I was trying to help you. You're not ready for this. You're barely keeping it together, and Marcus is never here. Emma deserves better." Agent Morrison stepped between us before I could respond. "Ma'am, I need to advise you that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I already read her rights," another agent said. "She's been talking non-stop since we got here." "What has she been saying?" I asked. Agent Morrison exchanged glances with her partner. "Maybe we should wait for your husband to get here before we go into details." "Marcus is coming?" "His plane landed at Reagan 20 minutes ago. He should be here within the hour." I looked down at Emma, who had finally stopped crying and was staring up at me with those impossibly blue eyes she got from Marcus. The thought of how close I'd come to losing her made my knees weak. "Rachel," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "how could you even think about doing this?" She was sobbing now, her words barely coherent. "The people I owe money to, Claire, they were going to kill me. I never meant for it to go this far. It started as just a conversation online, and then they offered so much money, and I thought maybe it would be better for everyone." "Better for everyone?" My voice cracked. "You were going to sell my baby." "The buyers seemed nice," Rachel continued, as if that made any difference. "They've been trying to adopt for years. They would have given her everything: private schools, college funds, trips to Europe, things you and Marcus could never afford." Agent Morrison held up a hand. "Mrs. Castillo, I strongly advise you not to engage further until you have legal representation." It hit me then that Rachel had used my maiden name. In all her planning, she'd been thinking of me as Claire Castillo, not Claire Reeves. Like my marriage to Marcus, our life together, our family, none of it was real to her. "Agent Morrison," I said, "can you tell me what exactly was going to happen? What was Rachel's plan?" The agent looked uncomfortable. "Based on what we found on her devices and the conversations she's had since we arrived, it appears she had arranged to meet with potential buyers tomorrow night at a motel in Springfield. The price discussed was $50,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. My sister had been planning to sell my daughter for $50,000. "There's more," Agent Morrison continued. "We found evidence that this isn't her first attempt at something like this. She's been active on several underground adoption websites, posting photos and information about infants in her extended network. Your daughter wasn't her only target." "Other babies?" The room started spinning. "We're still investigating, but it appears she may have been involved in at least 3 other cases over the past 18 months, all in different states. That's part of why this falls under federal jurisdiction." I sank into the armchair across from the couch, still clutching Emma. Rachel had built an entire criminal enterprise, and I'd been completely oblivious. Worse, I'd welcomed her into my home, shared my daughter's most vulnerable moments with her. "The buyers," I managed to ask, "have you arrested them too?" "That's happening as we speak. Multi-state operation. Your husband coordinated the whole thing from his command center in Texas before flying back here." Rachel looked up at me through her tears. "Claire, please. I know I messed up, but you have to understand. I was desperate. The people I borrowed money from, they don't just forget debts. They were threatening to hurt me, hurt people I care about." "So you decided to hurt me instead?" "I thought you'd be okay. You and Marcus, you're strong. You'd have other kids. The buyers would have sent photos, updates. Emma would have had a good life." Agent Morrison's radio crackled. "Morrison, ET on Deputy Chief Reeves is 5 minutes." I heard a car pull into our driveway, then another. Through the window, I could see more federal vehicles arriving. This was bigger than just Rachel's attempt to sell Emma. Much bigger. The front door opened, and Marcus walked in wearing the same tactical gear as the other agents. The relief on his face when he saw me holding Emma was overwhelming. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and wrapped both of us in his arms. "Are you both okay?" "We're fine," I whispered against his shoulder. "But Marcus, there's so much more to this. Rachel's been doing this to other families." He pulled back to look at me, his expression grim. "I know. We've been tracking a network that spans at least 6 states. Rachel's arrest tonight was just the beginning." "A network?" "Organized baby trafficking ring. They target vulnerable families, often using trusted relatives or friends to gain access to infants. Rachel was recruited about 2 years ago after she responded to an online ad that promised easy money for helping families connect with adoptive parents." The pieces were starting to come together. Rachel's financial problems, her sudden interest in staying with us, her detailed questions about Emma's paperwork. It had all been part of a larger plan. "How many babies?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "We're still investigating, but we think at least 15 successful transactions over the past 3 years. The prices range from $30,000 to $75,000, depending on the infant's age, health, and physical characteristics." I felt sick. And the families, what happened to them? Marcus's jaw tightened. Most never saw their children again. A few tried to fight it through legal channels, but by then the babies had been moved across state lines, sometimes out of the country. The paperwork was falsified, the trails went cold. Agent Morrison approached us with a tablet in her hands. "Deputy Chief, we've got confirmation on the Springfield location. 6 individuals in custody, including the couple who was supposed to meet with your sister-in-law tomorrow night." "Good. What about the website?" "Shut down as of 20 minutes ago. The tech team is working on identifying other users and victims." Rachel was still sitting on the couch, but she'd stopped crying. Now she was staring at Marcus with what looked like recognition dawning on her face. "You knew," she said quietly. "Before tonight, you already knew about all of this." Marcus looked at her with cold professionalism. "We've been investigating this network for 8 months. Your IP address flagged our system 6 weeks ago when you accessed one of the trafficking websites from this house." My blood went cold. 6 weeks ago. Marcus, you've known for 6 weeks that Rachel was involved in baby trafficking, and you didn't tell me? The look he gave me was apologetic but firm. I couldn't compromise the investigation. Too many other families were at risk. But Emma was at risk too. Emma was never out of my sight, Claire. We had surveillance on this house around the clock from the moment we identified Rachel as a potential threat. If she had tried to leave with Emma, she wouldn't have made it to the end of our driveway. I stared at my husband, this man I thought I knew completely, and realized there were entire parts of his life that remained a mystery to me. He'd been protecting our daughter while simultaneously orchestrating the takedown of a criminal network, and I'd never had a clue. "Ladies and gentlemen," Agent Morrison announced to the room, "we need to start processing evidence and preparing for transport. Mrs. Reeves, we're going to need a detailed statement from you, but that can wait until tomorrow if you prefer." As they led Rachel toward the door in handcuffs, she turned back to look at me one last time. "Claire, I'm sorry. I really am. But you'll understand someday. Sometimes you have to make impossible choices to protect the people you love." The door closed behind her, and suddenly our house was quiet again. Emma had fallen asleep in my arms, completely oblivious to the chaos that had surrounded her. Marcus was still in his tactical gear, speaking quietly into his radio about evidence collection and witness protection protocols. I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had changed in the span of a few hours. My sister was a criminal. My husband was leading federal investigations I knew nothing about. And my daughter had been the target of a trafficking ring that had successfully stolen at least 15 other babies. The question now was, what else didn't I know? The next morning brought a parade of federal agents, forensic specialists, and victim advocates to our home. Emma and I had barely slept, and Marcus hadn't slept at all. He'd spent the entire night coordinating raids across multiple states from our kitchen table, his laptop surrounded by empty coffee cups and classified documents I wasn't allowed to see. Special Agent Sarah Chen arrived at 7 a.m. with a box of pastries and a briefcase full of questions. She was from the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit and had been working the baby trafficking case from a different angle for over a year. "Mrs. Reeves, I know this is overwhelming," she said, settling into our living room with a voice recorder, "but your testimony is crucial to building our case against the entire network." What Agent Chen revealed over the next 2 hours changed everything I thought I understood about my sister's involvement. Rachel wasn't just a desperate woman who'd made a terrible choice, she was a key recruiter for what they were calling Operation Cradle Snatch. "Your sister has an unusual psychological profile," Agent Chen explained. "She's highly skilled at identifying vulnerable new mothers and gaining their trust. In the past 2 years, she's personally facilitated the trafficking of at least 8 infants." "8 babies," I whispered, holding Emma closer. "The network specifically targets women in postpartum depression, single mothers struggling financially, or families dealing with other stressors. Rachel would infiltrate their lives, sometimes as a helpful neighbor, sometimes as a new friend from a support group, once even as a babysitter found through an online service." Agent Chen opened a file and showed me photographs. Young women holding babies, all of them smiling at the camera. All of them are victims. "This is Jennifer Martinez from Phoenix. Rachel befriended her at a new mom yoga class. Jennifer's husband had just lost his job and they were facing eviction. Rachel convinced her that temporary guardianship would give them time to get back on their feet." The photo showed a pretty Hispanic woman with exhausted eyes cradling a newborn boy. Jennifer never saw her son again? The adoptive parents were told the baby was legally surrendered. They had no idea they were participating in trafficking. When Jennifer tried to get her son back after her husband found work, she discovered that all the paperwork was fraudulent. The legal firm handling the adoption didn't exist. Agent Chen flipped to another photo. This is Amanda Foster from Nashville. Rachel met her at a support group for mothers with postpartum anxiety. Amanda's baby girl was 6 months old when she disappeared. How did Rachel convince these women to give up their children? Different approaches for different situations. Sometimes it was financial, promises that the temporary adoptive parents would pay off debts or provide monthly support. Sometimes it was emotional manipulation, convincing the mothers they were unfit parents who were harming their children by keeping them. I thought about Rachel's words the night before. "You're not ready for this. Emma deserves better." She'd been using the same psychological manipulation on me that she'd perfected on other victims. What happened to the babies who were never returned? Agent Chen's expression darkened. That's where this case gets more complicated. We've discovered that not all of the adoptions were domestic. At least 5 infants were trafficked internationally, 3 to buyers in Eastern Europe, 2 to clients in Southeast Asia. The room started spinning. You mean some of these babies were sold overseas? The network has connections with international adoption fraud rings. American babies are particularly valuable on the global market because of their perceived health and legal status. Marcus looked up from his laptop, his face gravely. "Chen, show her the financial records." Agent Chen pulled out another document. "Your sister received payments totaling over $200,000 in the past 18 months. This wasn't about paying off debts to loan sharks, Mrs. Reeves. This was her primary source of income." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been worried about Rachel's financial problems and letting her live in our home, she'd been earning a 6-figure salary by stealing babies. "There's something else," Agent Chen continued. "We believe Rachel was being groomed for a promotion within the organization. The attempt to take Emma wasn't just about money, it was a test. A test for what? To see if she could successfully traffic a baby from her own family. The network leaders wanted to ensure her complete loyalty before moving her up to a regional coordinator position." Marcus closed his laptop and joined us on the couch. Claire, there's something I need to tell you about the timeline. The investigation didn't start because we identified Rachel as a suspect. What do you mean? It started because we identified you as a potential victim. The words didn't make sense at first. Me? How? 3 months ago, Rachel posted photos of Emma on one of the trafficking websites, along with detailed information about your family situation, my travel schedule, your postpartum struggles, even Emma's medical records. I felt like I was going to be sick. She was advertising Emma for sale 3 months ago? The post generated significant interest. Multiple buyers submitted bids, and Rachel was negotiating terms while living in your house, helping with diaper changes, and gaining your trust. Agent Chen showed me a printed screenshot of a website that looked like a twisted version of a pet adoption site. At the top was a photo of Emma sleeping in her bassinet, a photo I remembered Rachel taking, claiming she wanted to send it to our grandmother. Below the photo was a detailed description. Healthy 3-month-old female, excellent medical history, both parents college-educated professionals, father frequently travels for work, mother struggling with adjustment to parenthood. Ideal situation for immediate extraction. Asking price $75,000 OBO. The casual, business-like tone of the listing made me want to throw up. My daughter had been reduced to a commodity, described like a used car being sold online. How many people responded to this listing? 17 inquiries, 5 serious offers. The couple arrested in Springfield last night had submitted the highest bid, $85,000 plus a $10,000 bonus if the transaction could be completed within 2 weeks. Marcus reached over and took my hand. This is why I couldn't tell you about the investigation, Claire. We needed Rachel to believe everything was normal so we could identify the entire network. If you'd known and changed your behavior, we might have spooked her into running. But Emma was in danger this whole time. Emma was never alone with Rachel without surveillance. We had agents positioned around the clock, and we had contingency plans if she tried to move early. Agent Chen packed up her files. Mrs. Reeves, I need you to understand something important. Your sister's arrest last night led to the dismantling of the largest baby trafficking network we've ever encountered. Because of what happened here, we were able to rescue 3 infants who were scheduled to be moved out of the country this week. 3 babies? A 2-month-old boy in Denver, twin girls in Miami, and a 4-month-old girl in Seattle. All of them are being reunited with their families today. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than horror and betrayal. Relief, maybe even pride, that Emma's situation had somehow helped save other babies. What happens to Rachel now? She's facing federal charges for human trafficking, conspiracy, wire fraud, and kidnapping. Given the scope of her involvement and the number of victims, she's looking at a minimum of 25 years in federal prison. Agent Chen stood to leave. There's one more thing, Mrs. Reeves. Rachel has agreed to cooperate with our investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's providing information about other network members and helping us locate victims. After Agent Chen left, Marcus and I sat in our living room, holding Emma between us. The house felt different now, violated somehow, knowing that every corner had been photographed and cataloged as evidence. Marcus, I said quietly, how do we move forward from this? How do I trust anyone again? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, but I do know that we're going to get through this together, and we're going to make sure Emma grows up knowing she's safe. What about your job? Will this affect your career? Marcus gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Claire, there's something else we need to talk about. Something about why I was really in Texas this week. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The operation I was running, it wasn't just about Rachel and this trafficking network. We've been tracking a connection between domestic child trafficking and border security threats. Foreign criminal organizations have been using American child trafficking rings to establish smuggling routes and money laundering operations. Are you saying this is connected to international crime? I'm saying the organization Rachel was working for has ties to cartels, human trafficking operations in Eastern Europe, and illegal adoption networks spanning 12 countries. What happened to Emma wasn't just a family crisis, Claire. It was part of a national security investigation. Emma gurgled softly in my arms, completely unaware that her kidnapping had nearly exposed her to dangers that spanned continents. Looking at her innocent face, I realized that our ordeal was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Marcus, are we in danger? Is Emma still at risk? His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Petrov has a very specific methodology, Brennan continued. He never uses guns or explosives because they leave too much forensic evidence. Instead, he creates scenarios that look like accidents or medical emergencies. What kind of scenarios? Car accidents caused by brake line failures, house fires started by faulty electrical wiring, heart attacks induced by untraceable pharmaceutical compounds. In your case, he's most likely planning something that would eliminate all three of you simultaneously. What kind of scenarios? The clinical way she described methods for murdering my family made me want to scream. There's something else, Brennan said, her voice dropping lower. Kozlov didn't just hire Petrov to kill you. He hired him to retrieve Emma first. Retrieve her? Even with all the heat from federal investigations, there's still a buyer willing to pay $2 million for your daughter. Kozlov sees this as an opportunity to complete the original transaction and eliminate witnesses at the same time. $2 million? The number was so outrageous it didn't seem real. Emma wasn't just targeted for murder, she was still being sold like a commodity. Marcus returned from his phone call, his expression grim. We have a problem. Alexander Petrov entered the country 6 days ago using a Canadian passport with a false identity. He's been off the grid since Tuesday. He's probably already conducting surveillance on the safe house, Brennan said matter-of-factly. Petrov is extremely patient. He'll watch for patterns, identify vulnerabilities, and wait for the perfect opportunity. Agent Chen leaned forward. What else do you know about his methods? He prefers to work alone, but he's not above recruiting local assets if needed. He's charming, speaks perfect English with just a slight accent that most people assume is European. He could be anyone, a delivery driver, a maintenance worker, even a federal agent. The paranoia that statement triggered was immediate and overwhelming. How could we trust anyone if a professional killer could impersonate federal personnel? I need more specifics, Marcus said. Physical description, known aliases, vehicle information. He's approximately 6 feet tall, athletic build, brown hair and eyes. He has a small scar above his left eyebrow from shrapnel, and he's missing the tip of his right pinky finger. He usually drives rental cars, never the same vehicle for more than 2 days. Agent Chen was taking notes rapidly. Known associates, support network. Petrov works alone, but he has contacts within Russian organized crime cells in major U.S. cities. If he needs equipment or safe houses, he can access them through Brighton Beach in New York or Little Odessa in Los Angeles. What about his timeline? I asked. When is he planning to move? Brennan was quiet for a moment, as if calculating something. Based on his previous operations, he'll want to complete this job before the weekend. Too much unpredictable activity on weekends, too many variables. If I were him, I'd plan for tomorrow night or Friday morning. Less than 48 hours. Emma and I had less than 48 hours before a professional assassin planned to kidnap my daughter and kill my family. There's one more thing, Brennan said, something that might help you. What? Petrov has one weakness. He's obsessively superstitious about the number 13. He won't operate on the 13th of any month, won't use anything with 13 in the address or phone number, won't even stay in hotel rooms on the 13th floor. It seemed like a ridiculous detail, but Marcus was already checking his phone. Today is February 11th. Tomorrow is the 12th, which means he's definitely planning to move tomorrow, Brennan confirmed. He wouldn't risk waiting until the 13th. Agent Chen closed her notebook. This information is helpful, but we need more than superstitions and physical descriptions. Do you have any idea where he might be staying? How he's planning to approach the safe house? Brennan's expression became almost apologetic. That's all I can give you without putting myself at greater risk. But I will say this. Petrov doesn't just kill targets, he makes them suffer first. He believes psychological torture is as important as physical elimination. What does that mean for our family? It means he won't just shoot you and be done with it. He'll want you to know why you're dying, who ordered it, and what's going to happen to your daughter after you're gone. He'll make you watch Emma being prepared for transport to her new buyers before he kills you. The room started spinning. This wasn't just about murder. It was about torture, about forcing us to watch our daughter be stolen before we died. Why are you really helping us? I asked suddenly. What do you get out of telling us this? Brennan met my eyes directly. Because I have a daughter too, Mrs. Reeves. She's 15 years old, and she doesn't know what her mother does for a living. When this all comes out in court, when my face is on the news as part of a baby trafficking ring, her life will be destroyed. So this is about protecting your own child? Maybe. Or maybe after months of watching you with Emma, seeing how much you love her, I remembered what it felt like to be a real mother instead of a professional criminal. Agent Chen stood up. We have what we need. Transport will take you back to the safe house immediately. As we prepared to leave, Brennan called out one last warning. Mrs. Reeves, don't trust anyone you haven't known for years. Petrov is very good at becoming whoever he needs to be to get close to his targets. The person who kills you might be someone you actually like. Walking back through the detention facility, I realized that our nightmare was entering its final, most dangerous phase. Somewhere in the DC area, a professional killer was finalizing plans to torture and murder my family while stealing my daughter for a $2 million payday. And, according to Lisa Brennan, he planned to do it within the next 24 hours. The safe house erupted into controlled chaos the moment we returned from the detention facility. Marcus was on secure phone lines coordinating with multiple federal agencies, while Agent Chen briefed a rapid response team that had assembled in our living room. Emma slept peacefully in her portable crib, oblivious to the fact that a professional assassin was planning to kidnap her within hours. We're going to need to make some changes, Claire, starting with where we live. 3 days after Rachel's arrest, we were living in a federal safe house in Quantico, Virginia. The transition happened so fast, I barely had time to pack Emma's essentials before unmarked vehicles whisked us away from the only home my daughter had ever known. The safe house looked like a suburban family home from the outside, but inside it was clearly designed for protection. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, and security cameras in every room except the bathrooms. Marcus explained that we'd be staying there until the international connections to Rachel's trafficking network could be fully mapped and neutralized. What I didn't expect was to find other families there. Jennifer Martinez, the woman from Phoenix whose son had been trafficked, was staying in the room next to ours with her husband, Carlos. They'd been in protective custody for 6 weeks after receiving death threats from unknown individuals who demanded they stop cooperating with federal investigators. They found us even after we moved 3 times, Jennifer told me over breakfast on our second morning there. Someone called Carlos's work and said our family would disappear if we testified against the adoption agency. Amanda Foster from Nashville was there too, along with her husband and their recovered 6-month-old daughter. Amanda's baby had been one of the 3 rescued the night Rachel was arrested. The people who had Sophia treated her well, Amanda said, bouncing her daughter on her knee. They genuinely believed they'd adopted her legally through a Christian adoption agency in Tennessee. When the FBI showed up, they were as shocked as anyone. But it was the 3rd family that made me realize how deep this conspiracy really went. David and Patricia Wilson from Chicago had lost their twin boys 14 months earlier. The boys hadn't been recovered yet, and the Wilsons were in protective custody because David was a federal prosecutor who'd been investigating financial crimes that turned out to be connected to the trafficking network's money laundering operations. The adoption attorney who processed our boys' paperwork was laundering money for 3 different criminal organizations, Patricia explained during one of our group counseling sessions. Child trafficking was just one revenue stream. They were also moving money for drug cartels and arms dealers. Dr. Rebecca Torres, the FBI psychologist assigned to our case, facilitated these sessions every morning. She explained that the trafficking network operated like a sophisticated business, with different divisions handling recruitment, transportation, placement, and financial services. What makes this organization particularly dangerous, Dr. Torres said, is that they've embedded themselves within legitimate adoption agencies, legal firms, and even child protective services offices. They have contacts in hospitals, social services departments, and family courts across multiple states. That afternoon, Marcus came back from his daily briefings with news that made my blood run cold. "They've identified the top leadership of the network," he told me privately. "It's run by a man named Vincent Kozlov, a former Russian intelligence officer who's been living in Miami under a false identity for the past 8 years." Russian intelligence? Kozlov was expelled from the US in 2016 for espionage activities, but he returned illegally and established this trafficking operation as a way to fund other criminal enterprises. The baby sales generate clean money that gets invested in legitimate businesses, which then serve as fronts for smuggling operations. Marcus showed me a classified briefing document with Kozlov's photograph. He was a thin, pale man in his 50s with cold blue eyes and graying hair. How does this connect to national security? Kozlov's organization has been using the adoption network to move people and materials across borders without detection. They've smuggled at least 12 individuals into the US using fraudulent adoption paperwork, and we believe some of them are foreign intelligence operatives. The scope of what we'd stumbled into was staggering. What started as my sister trying to sell my baby had uncovered a criminal enterprise that threatened national security. "Marcus, why haven't they arrested this Kozlov?" "Because he's not just running a trafficking network, he's running a spy ring. The Department of Justice wants to monitor his communications and identify his entire network before making arrests. If we move too early, we might miss the bigger conspiracy." That evening, Agent Chen visited the safe house with an update that changed everything. "We've made contact with Rachel's handler," she announced to our group, "the person who recruited her and managed her activities for the trafficking network." "Rachel had a handler?" I asked. "A woman named Lisa Brennan, who presented herself as a social worker specializing in crisis intervention for new mothers. She's the one who identified you as a potential target, Mrs. Reeves." Agent Chen showed us surveillance photos of a professional-looking woman in her 40s with short red hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Brennan has been operating in the Washington, D.C. area for 3 years, specifically targeting families with connections to government or military personnel. She believed that stealing babies from federal employees would be particularly lucrative because of the security clearances and background checks involved. Security clearances? Babies from verified families command higher prices on the international market. Buyers pay premium rates for children whose parents have been thoroughly vetted by the U.S. government. The cynical calculation of it made me sick. Emma hadn't just been targeted because she was a helpless infant. She'd been targeted because Marcus's security clearance made her a more valuable commodity. Where is this Lisa Brennan now? That's why I'm here. Brennan has agreed to cooperate, but she's demanding to speak directly with you, Mrs. Reeves. With me? Why? She claims she has information about an imminent threat to your family that she'll only share with you personally. Marcus immediately objected. "Absolutely not. Claire is not meeting with anyone connected to this network." Agent Chen held up her hand. The meeting would be completely controlled. Federal facility, multiple agents present, full recording. And frankly, we need this information. Brennan claims that Kozlov has issued a contract to your family. A contract? A kill order. According to Brennan, Kozlov believes that your family's cooperation with federal investigators poses an existential threat to his organization. He authorized payment of $500,000 for your elimination. The room went silent. Emma was sleeping in my arms, completely unaware that someone had placed a $500,000 bounty on her tiny head. "This is exactly why we're not letting Claire anywhere near this woman," Marcus said firmly. "Deputy Chief Reeves, with respect, this may be our only chance to get ahead of the threat. Brennan claims she knows the identity of the operative Kozlov has hired to carry out the contract." Dr. Torres spoke up. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" According to Brennan, the operative is already in the D.C. area. The contract was issued 48 hours ago. I looked around the room at the other families. Jennifer was holding her husband's hand tightly. Amanda had unconsciously pulled her daughter closer. The Wilsons exchanged a look that suggested they'd been through similar threats before. "If I don't meet with her," I said slowly, "how do we find out who's been hired to kill us?" Agent Chen looked uncomfortable. We have other investigative methods, but they take time. Surveillance, electronic monitoring, informant networks. It could take weeks to identify the operative through conventional means. And in the meantime, we just sit here and wait for someone to try to murder my family? Marcus put his arm around me. Claire, we're safe here. This facility has never been compromised. We can wait it out. For how long? Weeks? Months? What kind of life is that for Emma? Dr. Torres leaned forward. Mrs. Reeves, I have to ask, are you considering this meeting because you want information or because you feel responsible for the situation your family is in? The question hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. Part of me did feel responsible. If I'd been more suspicious of Rachel, if I'd noticed the warning signs earlier, if I'd trusted my instincts when something felt wrong, maybe none of this would have happened. I just want my daughter to be safe, I said finally. Agent Chen gathered her files. I need an answer by tomorrow morning. The facility where Brennan is being held can accommodate the meeting, but the window won't stay open long. She's already providing information to other federal agencies, and her cooperation agreement has time limits. After Agent Chen left, Marcus and I put Emma to bed in the safe house nursery, a room that looked cheerful and normal except for the panic button next to the changing table. What are you thinking? Marcus asked as we watched Emma sleep. I'm thinking that 3 days ago, the most dangerous thing in my life was worrying about postpartum depression. Now I'm living in a safe house because Russian spies want to kill my family. We're going to get through this.
Are we? Marcus, what if this never ends? What if there are always more threats, more connections, more people who want to hurt Emma because of what we know? He was quiet for a long moment. Then we deal with each threat as it comes, but we don't make decisions based on fear. Is meeting with Lisa Brennan a decision based on fear or a decision based on protecting our family? I don't know, but I know that once we cross that line, once we start negotiating directly with the people who threatened our daughter, there's no going back. Through the bulletproof window, I could see unmarked federal vehicles patrolling the perimeter of the safe house. Somewhere out there, a professional killer was looking for us, hired by a man who sold babies to fund espionage operations. Emma stirred in her crib, making the small sounds that meant she'd be waking up soon for her nighttime feeding. Looking at her peaceful face, I made my decision. Set up the meeting. The federal detention facility in Alexandria looked like a cross between a hospital and a prison. Agent Chen escorted me through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one requiring fingerprint scans and retinal identification. Marcus had insisted on coming despite my protests, and he walked beside me in full tactical gear, his hand never leaving his service weapon. Remember, Agent Chen said as we approached the interview room, Brennan is highly manipulative. She's been trained in psychological manipulation techniques, and she's desperate to reduce her sentence. Don't believe everything she tells you, and don't let her make you feel guilty about Rachel's choices. The interview room was sterile and white, with a metal table bolted to the floor and cameras in every corner. Lisa Brennan was already seated when we entered, her wrists shackled to a chain around her waist. She looked smaller than in the surveillance photos, almost fragile, but her eyes were sharp and calculating. Mrs. Reeves, she said with a slight smile, thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult. You wanted to talk to me about a threat to my family? Straight to business. I respect that. Brennan leaned forward as much as her restraints allowed. Vincent Kozlov has hired someone to eliminate your entire family, not just you and your husband, your daughter too. The casual way she said it made my stomach turn. Who did he hire? A freelancer who goes by the name The Cleaner. Real name unknown, but I've worked with him before on previous operations. He specializes in making hits look like accidents or natural causes. Agent Chen spoke up from the corner. What kind of timeline? The Cleaner prefers to study his targets for several days before acting. He's been in the D.C. area since Tuesday, which means he's probably planning to move within the next 48 hours. How do you know all this? Brennan's expression became almost pitying. Because I recommended your family to Kozlov as targets in the first place.
I've been watching you for months, Mrs. Reeves. I know your routines, your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities. The room suddenly felt ice cold. You've been watching me? How do you think Rachel knew exactly when to show up at your door? How did she know your husband would be traveling for work? How did she know you were struggling with postpartum depression and would be grateful for help? Marcus stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. What did you tell her about my family? Everything. Your work schedule, Claire's medical appointments, Emma's pediatrician visits, even what grocery store you shop at and what time you usually go. Brennan looked directly at me. I've been building a psychological profile of your family for 8 months, Mrs. Reeves. I probably know you better than you know yourself. The violation felt worse than anything Rachel had done. At least my sister's betrayal had been impulsive, desperate. This woman had been systematically stalking my family with clinical precision. The cleaner has all of this information now, Brennan continued. He knows that you take Emma for walks in Potomac Park every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. He knows that Marcus stops at the Starbucks on Wilson Boulevard every morning at exactly 7:15. He knows that you have a standing appointment with your therapist every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Each detail hit like a physical blow. Our entire lives had been cataloged and analyzed by criminals planning to destroy us. Why are you telling us this? I managed to ask. Because I want to make a deal. Information about the cleaner's identity and methods in exchange for witness protection and a reduced sentence. Agent Chen crossed her arms. We're listening. The cleaner's real name is Alexander Petrov. He's a former Spetsnaz operative who's been working as a freelance assassin for Russian organized crime for the past 5 years. He's eliminated at least 30 targets across North America and Europe. Marcus pulled out his phone and stepped aside to make a call. I heard him speaking rapidly in what sounded like code words and abbreviations. Special Agent Rodriguez from the FBI's hostage rescue team spread building blueprints across our coffee table. If Petrov has been conducting surveillance, he knows the layout of this facility and our security protocols. We need to assume he's identified weaknesses in our perimeter. What kind of weaknesses? I asked, bouncing Emma gently as she started to fuss. Service entrances, shift change schedules, blind spots and camera coverage. This guy is a former Special Forces soldier. He thinks like we think. Dr. Torres arrived with a psychological profile she'd compiled based on Brennan's information. Petrov's methodology suggests he'll try to isolate the family before making his move. He needs time alone with his targets to complete the psychological torture component. How would he isolate us in a federal safe house? By creating a crisis that requires most of the protection detail to respond elsewhere, leaving minimal security here. Marcus looked up from his tactical planning session. Rodriguez, what's our evacuation protocol if we need to move the family immediately? Helicopter extraction from the roof, but that's only viable in extreme circumstances. Moving the family makes them more vulnerable during transport. Agent Chen was monitoring multiple communication channels on her laptop. We're tracking all rental car agencies in a 50-mile radius, looking for vehicles rented to anyone matching Petrov's description or using known aliases. The afternoon passed in a blur of security briefings and contingency planning. Every federal agent in the house was armed and alert, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were reacting instead of controlling the situation. At 6 p.m., Agent Rodriguez received a call that made everyone in the room freeze. There's been an incident at the FBI field office in Washington, he announced. Bomb threat called in 30 minutes ago. They're evacuating the building and requesting all available tactical support. Agent Chen looked suspicious. Could be a diversion, Marcus agreed. Petrov creating chaos elsewhere to pull resources away from here. Rodriguez was already coordinating with his team. Half our detail stays here, half responds to the field office. We can't ignore a credible bomb threat, but we won't leave the family unprotected. As federal agents prepared to leave for Washington, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Agent Morrison, who'd been part of our security detail since the first night, was checking his equipment with unusual attention to detail. He kept glancing at Emma in a way that seemed different from the other agents. I pulled Marcus aside. How well do we know Agent Morrison? He's been with HSI for 6 years. Why? Brennan said Petrov could impersonate anyone, even federal agents. How do we know Morrison is who he says he is? Marcus studied Morrison carefully. He's been here for 3 days. If he were Petrov, he would have made his move already. But something about Morrison's behavior was bothering me. He was left-handed, which I'd noticed when he signed paperwork, but earlier today, I'd seen him instinctively reach for his weapon with his right hand before correcting himself. Marcus, ask Morrison to show you his hands. What? Brennan said Petrov is missing the tip of his right pinky finger. If Morrison is really Morrison, his hands should be intact. Marcus approached Morrison casually. Hey, Morrison, can you help me with this tactical map? I need someone to point out the perimeter checkpoints. Morrison extended both hands to indicate positions on the map. His right pinky finger was complete and undamaged. My paranoia started to feel foolish until I noticed something else. Morrison's left eyebrow had no visible scar, but there was a small bandage just above it, the kind used to cover minor cuts or cosmetic concealment. Agent Chen, I called quietly, can you run Morrison's fingerprints again? Mrs. Reeves, Agent Morrison has been cleared through multiple security checks. Please, just run them again. Chen looked annoyed, but pulled out a portable fingerprint scanner. Morrison, routine security verification, standard protocol when protection details change. Morrison hesitated for just a fraction of a second before placing his finger on the scanner. In that moment of hesitation, I saw something in his eyes that confirmed my worst fears. The scanner beeped with an error message. No match found in federal database. The room exploded into motion. Marcus drew his weapon while Agent Chen shouted into her radio for immediate backup. Morrison smiled calmly and raised his hands. Very observant, Mrs. Reeves. Lisa Brennan said you were more perceptive than most targets. You're Alexander Petrov. Indeed, and you've just made this significantly more complicated for everyone. Rodriguez and his remaining team had their weapons trained on Morrison, but he seemed completely unfazed by being outnumbered. Here's the situation, Petrov said conversationally. I've been in this house for 3 days. I know exactly where every agent is positioned, what your communication protocols are, and how you respond to various threats. More importantly, I know that Emma's formula contains a mild sedative that will keep her calm during transport. My heart stopped. You drugged my baby? Nothing harmful, just enough to keep her quiet during the transaction. The buyers prefer calm infants, makes the initial bonding process easier. Marcus stepped closer, his weapon aimed at Petrov's center mass. Where's the real Agent Morrison? Agent Morrison is enjoying a forced vacation in a storage facility in Baltimore. He'll be fine if everyone cooperates. If not, Petrov shrugged. What do you want? Originally, I wanted to complete this operation quietly. Take the child, eliminate the witnesses, disappear before anyone knows what happened. But since my cover is blown, we'll need to do this the hard way. Agent Chen was whispering urgently into her radio, calling for additional tactical support. Petrov noticed and shook his head. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The bomb threat at the FBI building? That wasn't a diversion. That was an actual explosive device I planted this morning. If I don't check in with my associates every hour, they detonate it while the building is full of evacuating personnel. The psychological warfare was exactly what Brennan had warned us about. Petrov wasn't just threatening our family, he was threatening hundreds of federal employees. You're lying, Rodriguez said. Petrov pulled out his phone and showed us a live video feed of the FBI building's lobby, which was packed with evacuating personnel. Would you like me to demonstrate? Agent Chen lowered her radio. What do you want us to do? Simple. Mrs. Reeves and the baby came with me. Everyone else stays here and maintains their positions for exactly 2 hours. That gives me enough time to complete the transaction and disappear. We're not giving you Emma, I said firmly. Mrs. Reeves, you seem to misunderstand the situation. Your choice isn't whether to give me the child. Your choice is whether hundreds of federal agents die in addition to your family. Marcus's tactical training kicked in. Rodriguez, what's our play here? We don't negotiate with terrorists, Rodriguez replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Terrorist? I'm a businessman completing a transaction. The buyers have already wired $2 million to an offshore account. All that's left is delivery. Emma started crying, and the sound cut through the tension like a knife. I moved to comfort her, but Petrov held up his hand. Leave her. The sedative will take effect soon, and crying actually helps it work faster. The casual cruelty of drugging an infant while discussing her sale like a business transaction made me want to attack him with my bare hands. But with his finger hovering over his phone, ready to detonate explosives that would kill hundreds of people, I was trapped. Mrs. Reeves, Petrov continued, you have 60 seconds to decide. Come with me voluntarily, or I kill everyone in this room, detonate the bomb in Washington, and take Emma anyway. Agent Chen grabbed my arm. Claire, don't do this. We can find another way. What other way? Let him kill hundreds of federal agents? Let him murder my husband? Marcus moved closer to me. Claire, if you go with him, you're both dead. At least here we have a chance to fight. No, I said quietly. Here we have a chance to get other people killed. Petrov, if I come with you, you'll release Agent Morrison and disarm the bomb. Once the transaction is complete, yes. How do I know you won't kill me and Emma after you have the money? Petrov's smile was genuinely amused. Because, Mrs. Reeves, dead hostages can't wire additional funds when buyers want to expand their purchases. You and Emma aren't just merchandise, you're also potential leverage for future transactions. The implication hit me like a physical blow. This wouldn't end with Emma's sale. We'd be kept alive as bait to lure other family members into similar traps. Emma's crying began to subside as whatever Petrov had put in her formula took effect. Looking at my daughter's increasingly drowsy face, I realized that every choice available to me was wrong. But sometimes, the only way to save your family is to put yourself in maximum danger.
I'll go with you. Petrov led us through the safe house's rear exit to a black SUV idling in the driveway. Emma was barely conscious in my arms, her tiny body limp from whatever drug he'd given her. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to run, to fight, to do anything except voluntarily walk toward my daughter's sale and our probable deaths. Clever girl, Petrov said as he secured Emma's car seat in the back. Most mothers would have chosen the heroic option and gotten everyone killed. As we drove through Virginia's suburban streets, Petrov explained the logistics of our transaction with the casual tone of someone discussing dinner plans. The buyers are waiting at a private airfield in Manassas, very wealthy couple from Switzerland who've been trying to adopt for 7 years. They believe they're completing a legal private adoption facilitated by an international agency. They don't know they're buying a stolen baby? Mrs. Reeves, these people are paying $2 million for an infant. On some level, they know exactly what they're buying. The airfield appeared ahead of us, a small private facility surrounded by hangars and expensive aircraft. Petrov drove directly to a gleaming white Gulfstream jet where 2 people waited beside a luxury sedan. Heinrich and Margot Kellner looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of wealthy Europeans. He was tall and distinguished with silver hair, wearing an expensive suit despite the informal setting. She was elegant and nervous, clutching a pink baby blanket and looking like she might cry with anticipation. "The paperwork," Heinrich called out in accented English as we approached. "Is everything in order?" Petrov handed him a manila envelope. Birth certificate, medical records, and legal guardianship transfer documents. Everything you requested. I wanted to scream that the documents were fraudulent, that these people were participating in kidnapping, but Petrov's phone was still in his hand with the bomb detonation app ready. Margot approached us with tears in her eyes. "She's beautiful," she whispered, looking at Emma's sleeping face. "We've wanted a daughter for so long." "Mrs. Kellner," I said quietly, "you need to understand what you're really doing here." Petrov's grip tightened on my arm. "The birth mother is emotional about the separation. Perfectly normal." "No," I said louder, "this isn't a legal adoption. This is human trafficking. Emma is my daughter, and she's being sold against my will." Heinrich and Margot exchanged uncertain glances.
Alexander, you assured us this was legitimate. The adoption agency provided extensive documentation. The adoption agency doesn't exist, I continued desperately. This man is a Russian operative who runs a baby trafficking network. You're buying a kidnapped child. Margot stepped back, her face pale. Heinrich, maybe we should reconsider. Mrs. Kellner, Petrov said smoothly, birth mothers often experience emotional distress during the separation process. It's why we recommend immediate transport to minimize trauma for everyone involved. But I could see doubt creeping into their expressions. These weren't hardened criminals. They were desperate people who'd convinced themselves they were saving a child rather than buying one. Margot, I said, you seem like a good person. Would you want someone to steal your child and sell her to strangers? Of course not, but then don't do it to me. Heinrich was reviewing the paperwork with increasing skepticism. Alexander, some of these signatures appear inconsistent. And why isn't there a social worker present for the transfer? Petrov's patience was clearly wearing thin. Mr. Kellner, you've already wired the funds. The transaction is complete. Actually, Heinrich said slowly, our financial advisor has been having difficulty reaching your bank. The account information you provided doesn't seem to match any legitimate institution. I realized that the Kellner's due diligence might be our salvation. Their lawyers and financial advisors had probably discovered that the entire adoption setup was fraudulent. Mrs. Kellner, I said urgently, if you help me escape with my daughter, I'll make sure you're not prosecuted for your involvement. But if you take Emma on that plane, you'll be accessories to kidnapping and international child trafficking. Margot was crying now. Heinrich, we can't do this. This is wrong. Mr. Kellner, Petrov's voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. I suggest you complete this transaction immediately, or the consequences will be severe. Heinrich straightened to his full height. Are you threatening us, Alexander? I'm explaining reality. You've seen my face. You know about this operation, and you've received stolen merchandise. Whether you take the child or not, you're already complicit. That's when I heard the sound that made my heart soar. Helicopters approaching from multiple directions. Marcus had found us. Petrov heard them too, and immediately grabbed Emma from my arms. Into the plane, now. Heinrich, don't let him take her. But the Kellners were already backing away from the confrontation. Alexander, we're leaving. Keep our money, but we want no part of this. They ran toward their sedan as federal helicopters surrounded the airfield. Petrov was trapped, holding my sedated daughter while tactical teams rappelled from aircraft onto the tarmac. Mrs. Reeves, Petrov said calmly, your husband is about to make a very poor decision. Through a bullhorn, Marcus's voice echoed across the airfield. Petrov, release the hostages and surrender. You're surrounded with no possibility of escape. Actually, Petrov called back, I have 2 hostages and a dead man switch connected to explosives in Washington, D.C. If I'm killed or incapacitated, 200 federal employees die. I could see Marcus through the helicopter's open door, his face torn between protecting his family and protecting his colleagues. What do you want? Marcus shouted. Safe passage to the aircraft and guaranteed departure clearance. Once I'm airborne, I'll provide the bomb's location and disarmament code. And the hostages? Will be released when I reach international waters. It was a lie, and we all knew it. Petrov had no intention of releasing us alive. Marcus, I shouted, the bomb is probably fake. He's been psychologically manipulating everyone. Petrov smiled coldly. Would you like me to prove it's real, Mrs. Reeves? He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Instead of a bomb detonation app, it displayed a simple timer counting down from 30 seconds. This timer is synchronized with Agent Morrison's smartphone, which I left in his pocket in Baltimore. When it reaches 0, it sends an automatic text to emergency services reporting shots fired at his location. The responding officers will find him tied up in a storage unit, very much alive, with no bomb anywhere. 27 seconds. The FBI building evacuation was caused by an anonymous phone tip about suspicious packages that don't exist. No explosives, Mrs. Reeves, just psychological warfare. 22 seconds. I realized that Petrov had been bluffing from the beginning. There was no bomb, no immediate threat to hundreds of federal employees, no leverage except Emma and me. 18 seconds. Marcus, I screamed, he's lying about everything. Take the shot. 15 seconds. Petrov raised Emma above his head like a shield. Excellent tactical analysis, Mrs. Reeves. Unfortunately, you're still my hostage. 12 seconds. That's when I remembered something from Marcus's tactical training that he'd mentioned years ago. In hostage situations, creating unexpected movement or distraction could provide snipers with a clear shot opportunity. 8 seconds. I threw myself sideways, away from Petrov, hitting the tarmac hard, but creating separation between him and Emma. 5 seconds. The sniper's bullet caught Petrov center mass. He dropped Emma, who was caught by Agent Rodriguez before she hit the ground. 3 seconds. Petrov was still breathing, blood spreading across his chest, but he was smiling. 1 second. Mrs. Reeves, he whispered, this network has dozens of operators. Kozlov will send someone else. 0. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. Package delivered successfully. Moments later, emergency services in Baltimore confirmed they'd found Agent Morrison alive and unharmed. 6 months later, we were living in Seattle under new identities provided by the Witness Protection Program. Marcus had taken a position with border security on the West Coast, and I was working as a victim advocate for trafficked families. Emma was walking now, taking her first steps in a rented house 3,000 miles from where she'd almost been sold to strangers. She had no memory of being drugged, kidnapped, or held hostage by international criminals. Rachel was serving a 25-year sentence in federal prison. She'd cooperated fully with investigators, helping them identify and rescue 43 trafficked children across North America and Europe. Sometimes I wondered if she understood the magnitude of what she'd done, or if she still believed she'd been trying to help. Vincent Kozlov was arrested in Miami 3 weeks after Petrov's death. His entire network collapsed when federal agencies across 12 countries coordinated simultaneous raids based on evidence recovered from the trafficking websites. Lisa Brennan received a reduced sentence of 8 years for her cooperation. Her 15-year-old daughter was placed with relatives in Oregon, far from the media attention surrounding her mother's crimes. Heinrich and Margot Kellner were never prosecuted. Their lawyers had documented their good faith efforts to verify the adoption's legitimacy, and their immediate withdrawal when they suspected fraud demonstrated their unwillingness to participate knowingly in trafficking. But the victory felt incomplete because Petrov had been right about one thing. Criminal networks like this don't disappear when leaders are arrested. They adapt, recruit new operators, and find new victims. Emma was safe, our family was together, and 43 other children had been reunited with their families. For now, that was enough. As I watched my daughter play in our new backyard, protected by a security system that would make federal facilities envious, I thought about all the families who weren't as fortunate as we were. All the mothers who never got their children back. All the babies who disappeared into international adoption networks and were never seen again. Emma looked up at me and smiled, taking another wobbly step across the grass. She was walking toward her future now, one careful step at a time, in a world that was marginally safer because we'd survived our nightmare and lived to tell the story. Sometimes, the best you can do is save the family right in front of you and hope that justice finds a way to save the rest. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.